from as long as I can remember. I had a hurley stick, I had 5 sisters, they had camogie sticks, and we lived exactly half a mile from the national school. So at every break on the village green, which is still there, you played hurling. And there was about, I'd say, 150 kids, right, in a little paddock, really. And you played it, and then of course you played football as well. And because in my early days going to school, Meath suddenly made a breakthrough, sort of with the 1949 team, and that was brought home the very first Sam Maguire, and then they brought home a National League, and then they brought home another Sam Maguire in '54, and the railway station is beside our house, and people at that stage they went up on the train, and they were all steam trains, and beside us, across just beside the station, which is beside the paddock, that's where the trains all refueled with water. So the people would be leaning out, they'd be smoking and have the suits, and at that time it was all hats and scarves and everything else. And we were showing off, having the ball, kicking the ball and jumping in the air. We thought we were Paddy O'Brien or Peter McDermott or Brian Smith or whoever it was. And we'd be getting you to do soul runs, like, when I think back on it, but it was great. And that's the way sort of people always encourage, and that's really, really nice. And so I never remember not playing hurling, never remember not playing football. And the men who were working with my father, they were very much involved in football and hurling, Jack Moore and Mick Riley, and they were, Mick's brother Jim won an All-Ireland in '54, and then Jim's son Brendan won 2 All-Irelands with us in '88 and '96, and it just goes on from there, and it's Jack Moore was 15 when he won his first and only Leinster minor hurling, beating Kilkenny in hurling, Dunboyne minor as a Meath minor. He was 15 years of age. He scored 4 goals, and he was sort of a prodigy around the area here. Like, people would talk about a DJ afterwards, and so you're always with the masters. You grew with them because they were revered. You follow me, and but it was great, and I was really small, and because you were mixing with the kids from sort of infants and first class with the ones who were in 5th class and 6th class, you got used to learning the craft. You also got used to taking knocks. You learned how to survive. You learned how to tackle. Sometimes it was the hard way, but that was it. And you just loved the games. Then afterwards, I remember going to school here. And yes, it was a rugby school, but in the Common Gaelic, we played hurling. And at that stage, my early days in there, we All-Ireland champions, you know what I mean? And it was a great thing. And it was so strange because it was the birth really of the first of the St. Vincent's team in Dublin, and 14 of that team were on the Dublin senior team. Played in the 1955 All-Ireland final, and they played in the '58. And Kerry beat them in '55, captained by John Dowling, from John was the famous John Dowling. And then in 1958 they were captained by Kevin Heffernan. It was and Dan O'Mahony was. But there was just, and so it was the change of play that Dublin brought to it at the time, and then you went from there, and suddenly Down appeared, and they appeared sort of. They were just. You had Galway, you had Cavan for so long, and you had Galway, and then Down came along, and you had Cork in the '50s as well, and so every one of those players were involved in the All-Ireland. I always thought you were one of those. I thought you were as good, and at 5'5", you still picture yourself taking the balls out of the clouds. You know what I mean? And they were great things, but they were extraordinary memories. And Micheál O'Hare was doing the commentary, and then some years later, Micheál O'Hare came in doing it in Australia, and but it was just. It was what was the community was about. I remember being on holidays in Mohill in County Leitrim, and my first had to meet with a man called Packy McGarty. And Packy McGarty played for Leitrim for 27 championship years. An amazing man. And he used to go to my Uncle Charlie's pub. And I remember sitting around the radio. Meath played Louth in the '54 championship, and they met 3 times, right? And sure, all the town, all the village, they were all in listening to the radio, because even radios were scared, And so there was a great innocence. And yet, if you went over to Bettystown, if you went over to the beach, because that's where we went, and suddenly people had things like a transistor radio. Sure, there'd be more people listening to the radio than there would be in the sea. You know, it was, and they were all just lovely times. And then, of course, you practiced up and down the beach itself, you know, and little did I think years afterwards that I would use those facilities of nature, you know, to help the team that I was involved with and so on. And so the memories were, and they've been almost like indelible. You know, my dad apparently was a very good hurler, and the team he was captain of, they won 5 senior championship medals with Dunboyne, first in 1908, the last in 1914. But that team was trained by a man called Bob O'Keefe. Bob O'Keefe was a young school teacher from Borris-in-Ossory then. We went to Borris-in-Ossory, but he was from Mooncoin. The Bob O'Keefe Cup was called after him. He went to Borris-in-Ossory. But like Dunboyne Club sailed away the black and amber, because that's where he was from. He was the Kilkenny man, right? And so it was, and we've been in many finals. We've actually never won a final since. The pitch at the time was in our own land. It was called the hurling field. And then back in the 40s, early 40s, a group of men got together, and they brought the parish together, and they had a Gaelic football team as well, and people would realise that as far as 1939, hurling was the big game in Meath, and Meath, that great sort of Father McManus, who was the great coach, team captain by Matty Gilson, they got as far as the All-Ireland semi-final and final. Do you understand? We're beaten. But that sort of started the turnaround. And when Brian Smith captained the Meath team in 1949, he said, I've signed the death warrant for the game I love. In other words, the people in Meath will stop playing hurling. But Brian, I think he was 42 years secretary of the Meath Hurling Board. An extraordinary man, even though he's county board chairman, Leinster Council rep for so long. And like, he would have been so well known all over, you know, as the man who brought the Sam Maguire. But he loved both games. And it was nice for us in our parish that we were a dual club. We still are. We're 2 senior clubs, senior hurling, senior football, and lots of teams. And then the big breakthrough, I suppose, lately would have been the introduction of ladies football, into the club. And they had a club separate, they had teams separately, but then the two merged. And honest to God, I think it's been the making certainly of suddenly it became community again in a big way. So when you have a parish that 35 years ago, you had 250 people in it, and you've close to 10,000 now. But the focal point is that GAA place, that GAA field, and that's fantastic. And through some government grants and GAA grants and everything else, to see the way the money's been used really wisely, and the procurement of pitches, but more importantly, they're looking after them. And a huge community thing. We had Willie Lyons in the school, the headmaster. He coached every team in the place for 25 years. And Willie's a Mayo man. I'd say he's as proud as punch of Mayo today. But like Willie, so many lads came through that won All-Irelands with him. From, you go back to Anna McManus, Brendan Riley, so many of them just, they won All-Irelands, and they all came through with Willie Lyons. And as a result, the club and the school and everything, they were never too far apart, which was wonderful. And then afterwards in the parish, you got a team called St. Paul's or the Flat House. And also back again at the end of the 50s, Kilbride, who would be the outer parish, the outer church of the parish, they formed a team. And that was the famous Meath team that 7 or 8 of those lads went to Australia in '68 with the Meath team. You had the Jack Quinn and Marty and Jerry, God be good to him. You had Marty Sullivan, you had Pat Bruton, you had Pat Rooney. They were just great footballing men. And they won 5 senior championships. And, there wasn't 150 people in the parish or in that part of the parish. But again, they were extraordinary. They were going really well at football, and we were junior. Then we became intermediate, and then we became senior. But again, within the parish, there was but there was also that intense rivalry, that parochial at its best. It was amazing, amazing times. Amazing times. So that's where it started from. Very fortunate that somebody always brought me to matches, and I always remember Brian Smith. Brian was a great man to encourage children. As a matter of fact, it's something he always wanted the GAA to do, was particularly with National Hurling League. I was lucky. I remember the Raven Cup matches, and I remember the huge crowds in Croke Park, and it was extraordinary, and it was amazing. And but like you saw the stars, and now the stories are great. I'm afraid maybe in ways T.G. Cahir maybe made liars of us all, because the fantasy was sometimes far better than what actually happened. Do you understand? But again, it's how does it keep going? And then it was always that, that great coming together, both sides sort of mixing together. Like it's spectacular and it's wonderful. And so many other sports can't understand how that would happen. But that's the GAA, you know what I mean? And I think because with the games, particularly with Gaelic football, you can be attacked from the front, and you can be attacked from the side, and you can be attacked from the back. And that awareness that you have to have. And that's what makes it extraordinarily interesting. There's no rest period really with it. And the hurling, is just such a unique game. But like the focus is not on the ball, it's on the sliotar. You know what I mean? And like the sliotar in itself tells a story, and it's a bit like, there's no literal translation for a bowron. It's it. I know it's the Greyhound scale, but it gives this music, but there's no really literal. It's a bowron. It's the same as a sliotar, and it's the same with the hurley stick. And when we were kids, out the railway banks, because all the cinders being thrown out from the coal engines, over the years, it was a great place for ash to grow, and the lads would be going along, and they come along, say, around the end of September, the end of October, when the sap was going back down to the root, and they'd take a little fork or a spade or a pick, and they'd pull the soil away from where the roots were, so that with capillary attraction, with the sun, that the roots would start to come up. And of course, this is where you got the curve, and like, again, how do people always know this? This is the extraordinary thing of knowledge. And then I suppose you realise, and I realised then, we're actually custodians of these games, because that's what makes us maybe a little bit different than maybe the rest of Europe or maybe the rest of the world, in that the games have been so well handed down. Like, people get hard to believe in the early 50s, up to then there was a minor and there was senior. There was no such thing as under 14. Under 14, when it was introduced, the championships, certainly in Meath, it was, you're talking in terms of 1951, 52, 53. That was the start of, and the way it has exploded. And I think that's what I say about people taking ownership of it. And like, you go to our club because it's, there's there are people from really every country in the world, never mind every county in Ireland, right? And they come as Dublin men or Cork or Offaly or whatever it is, and then their kids, they get older, and their daughters or the sons wear a county jersey, and then suddenly they have to wear that county jersey as well. And that's really, and you see, in the 40s and early 50s in Dublin, the only work that was anywhere was in Dublin. And of course, teams like Owen Rowe and Sean McDermott and all those, Flann Gael, they were teams, country lads joined those clubs. Do you follow me? And that's how, in the heart of it, like Jim Roche said with Dublin, like Jim is there for eternity, but Wexford man is still in him, you know what I mean? Even though he's Central Council representative, he's there at all the matches and so on. And that's great. In other words, we are who we are, we are who we were. You know what I mean? And that's important. But that's how it's synonymous with me. It's ingrained. I never knew it any other way. Never knew it any other way. That was it. I suppose I would think back to Bobby Rusk, Pat Kelly, Tommy Rusk, the people who started off as juveniles, Paddy McIntyre and so on, they had a huge influence. And that was nearly because they minded you as well as everything else, you know. And you learn to appreciate the people who collect the money for the club, who look after the field, who cut the grass, who mark it out. And like without them, this wouldn't happen. And this extraordinarily voluntary organisation. And you see lads going around marking pitches, like Tommy Howe, the referee, famous 400 matches with Meath in Dublin. And you go over to Kilcullen, and Tommy's looking after the flags and the pitches and keeping them right and so on. And these men have been at the top, right? And they just, I remember ringing John Fenton one day. Cork were playing, and they lost their goalkeeper. And I rang John, and John was just, Sean, I wasn't able to watch it. She said, there's a match on the club this evening, you know, one of the greatest hurlers of all time, but getting it ready for somebody else to play. Even though his heart would be in watching his county, he still wanted Middleton, you know, that the things to be right there. And there's a Middleton in Dunboyne, and there's one in Tyrone, you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter how big or how small. And are there mistakes made? There's oceans of them made. But like most people understand, people just do their best. That's it. It might be good enough, but they do their best. And until somebody else comes along that can make it that bit better, or that it'll make sense to the people, you're right? Then there will be certain resistances and everything else. But I suppose your county team, you know, always has a big influence on you. It's like the shop window. And I can remember being quite young and Louth were playing Cork in All-Ireland final, 1957. And Meath Miners were playing the match beforehand. And as far as I can recollect, a team of Seamus Lynch and Paddy Riley and so on, that was the first Meath team to win an All-Ireland hurling final, or an All-Ireland football final. And I remember being behind at the canal end, being behind the goal. And you remember the barriers and the people, the crowds of people, but they minded the young fella in front. And like, I can still see PJ Riley kicking out the ball, and he's from Kilbride. But PJ Gobblegood was my friend for life, you understand? And you had the Red Meeting, you know, playing for Louth. But he had played for Meath Seniors as well, you know, at cornerback. And Kevin Bean and, you know, Dermot O'Brien, you know, it's the big O'Neill man in the middle of the field, you know, Stephen White. And the other we have was the man from Dundalk, Mr. Lynch, right? It's the influence that it has on you, but also then the interest that you suddenly learn about lads from all sorts of Cork and everywhere else. Like today, there's a lot of talk about terrible sacrifice play. I don't like the word too much, and I was talking to Dr. Con Murphy, and I was talking about a friend of mine, John Sullivan, who died in Bear Island. And Con said, I didn't know you had been on Bear Island. He said, that's where I'm from. And I never realised that that's where the famous Rishi Murphy was from, right? And then Con would tell me about his father, told me about his father, Gobblegood. And there was a semi-final in All-Ireland. And there was no ferry at the time. So he drove across to the mainland and he cycled from there to the nearest big town, which is Blarney or Bantry, whatever it was, right? And it was 16 miles. And there was a car from the county board to pick him up and a few others there. And they came up to Kent Station in Cork. And they came up to Dublin and they played the All-Ireland semi-final. And win or lose, you're back down on the train for the deadline. When you get back to Cork, you're into the car, you're back down to either Blarney or Bantry, whichever it was. And then you cycle from there to Castletownbere and you row out home. Now, there's probably no need for doing weights or anything like that when you were doing things like that, right? But again, it's that passion for the game and what it represented, you know what I mean? And so the influence that, you know, when we were kids, the Kerry team used to stay in Eamon Walsh's house, which was JJ McCarthy's house in Dunboyne. and there were 14 rooms in it. And and that's where the Kerry team would stay, because they couldn't afford a hotel, or you couldn't get a hotel for the All-Irelands, you know. So people like the famous Bob Stack, like, I would have known him really well. And afterwards, when he was involved with the farmers' rights, with the NFA before it became IFA, you know, the march to Dublin and so on, right? And Hugh Leddy from Leitrim, and they were from all over the place, right? And Richard Deasy, and, you know, James TJ Marr and so on. But like, that football and hurling connection was always there. It was all part of the community. And so the influence that these people had on us was enormous. And then I went to school in Belvedere, and then I left Belvedere. And I was at Clogher Road in Crumlin for 2 years. And my mother and father wanted me to be good in my hands. And the trades were taught there, and electricity, mechanics, and heat, and so on. And every Thursday, in the sports ground on Temple Oak Road, it was the vocational school's sports ground. And Mick Gill, who won All-Ireland with Limerick, looked after those sports ground. And they were immaculate. Now, it's not like today where you had all the machinery that you had, right? And this, I'm talking about 1958, 59, right? And but our PE teacher was a man called Jim McCabe. I've been good to him. And Jim McCabe was 19 on the Cavan team that won the All-Ireland in 1952 at the Bet Meath, right? And he had a pal called Charlie Gallagher. And they would arrive up, we were going for training. Then they would start training themselves. And to see Charlie Gallagher, he'd kick a ball maybe 60 times practicing frees, or Jim kicking out the ball to make sure that it went wherever they wanted it to go. And how you soak that up and the influence that it had on you. I remember in 1996, after the lads won the All-Ireland, and we were down in Ballymahan, or I was down in Ballymahan, because Keepack had a factory down there. And there was the community college in Ballymahan, and there was also the presentation comedy. And pupils from both, right? It's very unusual, right? But you had Brazilians now living down there, and they were in both schools, right? And I started to tell the story about learning how to practice and why you do it. And I told the story about Jim McCabe. And I got a beautiful letter a week later. He was with the World Bank at the time in New York. And he had a son who was with the Longford Leader, covering the event. I didn't know that his son was there. But that's what the memory was like. It wasn't trying to score points. It was like a way of saying thanks for helping to make me what I was, you see. And that's so when you ask about the people who influence you, sometimes it's the most extraordinary people. There was a man called Paddy Lahan from Coolay, and he taught in Boys Middle School here in County Meath. And Paddy Lahan was an absolute legend. And I would say he was a legend. The way he was at the school, and he spoke in Irish and English to the pupils, right? And they all became Gaelgoers, but they all played hurling and they played football. And he was the treasurer of the county board. And he just was such a remarkable man. And if ever you're talking to former Minister Noel Dempsey, and there were 12 in his family, they all would have gone down to Coolay to learn Irish. And Morley Lera, she was the chairman of the club down there, you know. And I went down to a presentation one night. Her son Sean was on that famous Cork team, right? And I got a call. It wasn't 5 minutes at the hotel. It was Padder. I'll meet you tomorrow morning for breakfast. And I said, Padder, I can't. And he said, why? I said, when it's over tonight, I said, I'm heading for Mulla in Cavan. It's a long way, Sean. It's a long way from Skibbereen, right? And so I left at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning because we were playing Cavan. It was only a challenge match, but that's, you know, and that's the way it was. But the links were there, and the influence of these people, like, they gave everything they had to it. And you know, it must have been incredibly difficult and incredibly hard. And I always remember Ned Quinn, the influence that Ned had in this way. When we were training in the 80s in Dagenham Park in Navan, in the Glumman House there, Ned Quinn would often go to the training sessions, not realising at the time that he had a sister, a teacher in Navan, right? And this is a Kilkenny, famous Ned Quinn from Kilkenny. And he went home one night, and it's amazing what you learn. And he said to his county board, He said, now we're wasting our time. I don't want to go to a match with 30 kids and only give 18 of them a game. He said, take the competition out of them until they're about 14. Let them all play and let them all, so that no child is disappointed. And they're the influences that, this is how you perpetuate a game, because lads who can be really not up to it at all, some people just this great natural talent, but others become great players afterwards, and so many of them would not have played at intercounty minor, but became great adult players. And there were 14 selectors in the Meath team in 1949, but there was no transport. Everything was on the bike. Father Tully was the chairman of the county board. So when they'd be picking a team, there'd be a phone call to Park Towson and Navan that the picking of the team would be delayed because he'd have a funeral at 7 or half 7 in his parish, right? And Frankie Bourne got me going to on the 49 team, was a school teacher in Dublin, right? And Frankie would be going up to Dublin afterwards, getting a lift back up to Dublin. So he mightn't get in till 12 o'clock at night, you know what I mean? But it was all done for the love of the game, and that was lovely. And I often think how things are passed on. That famous McGrath report in Dublin, in 2002, how that changed, with John Costello and all the people that were involved with it, and Kevin Heffernan, and Pat Gilroy and so on. Suddenly, you see sort of in Dalkey kids carrying their hurley sticks, right? Where years and years ago you would have seen no hurley sticks. And so the Gaelic football, and if you stop and think of the size of the clubs in Dublin, but they're so proud of every single one of their own clubs. And so in other words, this is where the heart of the community is, and so they're the things that have a massive influence on you. And then when I was lucky enough to go abroad, no matter where you went, I was given a talk in Scotland. Now, this is years and years ago, and I met 3 lads from Simonstown, and it was amazing. Like, they were over coaching in Scotland, right? And they met through farm work, right? And no one knew anything about it. And the same happens in so many places. They just get in the car, go and do it, and not looking for thanks or whatever. And that's what's beautiful about it, and it's great. So the influences are huge. One of the men that would have had a huge influence on me would have been Seán Boylan, former Irish Hurler, great Shanachie, great storyteller. But he had that link with the people, and like, he could get up and sing a song or say a few words, but he had a great ability to bring people together. Paddy O'Keefe, they had a huge influence. A very difficult thing for Uachtaráin and Irish Hurlers later to follow on with, and the canvas of Liam Mulvihill, you know what I mean? Pádraig Duffy then brought it to another stage, and like Tom Ryan is there now. Really difficult jobs, because it's very easy at club level. Look, blame Croke Park for everything, but it's not Croke Park. They're the people that we have there now, so it's up to us to make our voice heard or whatever it is. And I just think that there was a thing years ago in Ireland that they wouldn't be blaming everybody, and I grew up in a way that don't let things, nasty things, or don't let bullies, don't let any of those people ever empower you. You know what I mean? Just don't, just learn to be yourself and trust yourself. And I think the sport taught me that, and I was never interested in the blame. Same was involved with, played for years, but the same when I was involved with the lads, people say I'd say he ate them at half time. Look at the amount of times that I would try to eat them, you know what I mean, would be pure stupid, because I wouldn't. I'd rather say, what can we do? And I think that comes through an awful lot, because my very first match I played was in Ritulf, and it was an under 10s match. Sorry, an under 14 match, and it was coming 10. And the elastic broke in my togs just beforehand. and I had a belt, and it was a little belt years ago. You get it. It was a buckle on it, and Jim Riley came over to me at half time. Man, I talked about early on, famous Meath footballer, Dublin footballer. Brendan is one of his sons. And Jim came over to me at half time, and he just a little tap on the shoulder. Seán, do you mind if I say something to you? I said, what, Jim? If you can't play well, look well, right? And it was, but again, it's how you present yourself, you know. And it's a great because people had people didn't have much, but what they had, you know, it was like, you know, you minded your boots and you polished them. Sure, they had to last forever. Whereas nowadays you can get them as often as you like. But they were all great lessons. You learned how to repair them or put in studs or whatever. You repaired hurley sticks, and they were great lessons. And but it doesn't mean that it always has to stay like that. Whatever you do to make it easier, make it better, and just be thankful for where we are. So we thought the place was gorgeous when we went in there first. But I was first brought in there. uh, the All-Ireland 1951, Meath. That was my first introduction to the place. And straight away, it was Mecca. And when you stop and think what an amateur association did in the restructuring then, with Paddy O'Keefe, then afterwards through Liam Mulfeed and everybody else, and everything paid for, it just shows you the strength of what it is. And that realization that no matter what county in Ireland you come from, it's our stadium. The fact it's located in Dublin has a lot to do with one way, but nothing to do with it in another way. It is our stadium, and and it's our Mecca, and it's you know, so when it was, you know, you had the wooden seats, and you know, you had the odd piece of board out, which, you know what I mean, you might get a splinter or whatever. It didn't really matter, you know, it didn't really matter. But going back to when Con Gobblegoodton was looking after the grass, like the job he did with the machinery that he had, you know, it's, and I think that's fierce important that, like, I remember Sean Kelly and he bringing inviting all the clubs from Munster up to the new Cusack stand on Saturday morning. There was a seminar. But the pride of people getting on the train that morning, there were 6 representatives from every club. A really great thing to do, because lots of people would never be fortunate to get a match ticket for the big day. But here was the day, and they spent the day and they walked around it. And yes, the museum was starting off, but they walked around it, and the memories that came. And if there were tape recorders at the time, the stories that were told about incidents that happened, and about people, you know, using the rope up at as they call it, the hill end now, and the ropes to pull people up to give them a lift to sit on the wall or sitting on the nally stand or the top of the home. Like how we weren't all killed. We weren't killed because, look, there's nothing but goodness was happening there. And had they got to change it, without a question, and have they done a great job? It's not a bad seat in Croke Park. And so it's been remarkable. And I love to see the pride that so many of the people who work there take in keeping it like that. And that's absolutely brilliant. And the tours of Croke Park have been a great thing, particularly for the schools. And one of the great days for me was the Thomas Francis Meagher Foundation Day in Croke Park with the tricolour. And that every secondary school in Ireland, every school in Ireland was represented. They represented the copy of the proclamation and the Irish flag to bring back to their school. In other words, it has never lost its touch with where we came from. Those events are fierce important, and long may be so. In Meath circles and many GAA circles, Steve Crean was a very famous man. He was the Meath County Board Secretary. Our chairman after Brian Smith was a man called Fintan Ginnity. But Brian Smith was chairman, and Lee was the secretary. And I got a phone call on a Monday night, and I had finished off with Meath Hurlers, my last year as player manager, and wondered what was I going to do. I knew I was still going to play for the club. I was 39 years of age, and or come at 39, and they rang me about training or coach. You see, you didn't call a manager at the time, you called coach and trainer, right? And I said, "Geez, lads, hold on." They said, "No one else in for it." And I said, "No." Well, I said, "Well, who was nominated?" They mentioned Matty Kerrigan, Mick O'Brien, and Desi Ferguson and Jerry McEnany. And I said, "Are you talking about the football team?" "Yes, I am. I absolutely." "Well, what are you going to do?" "Oh, no, hold on, Liam." So give me a chance. Jesus, Mary and Joseph, let me think about this, right? And I said, "Look, I'll talk to you later." He said, don't take too long over it," he said. So I got into my car, and I was Brian Smith, who lived on Summerhill Road, and he was the county board chairman at the time. And he started to laugh when he saw me. And Brian was a great man to do the devil's advocate, right? And we talked for a while. And then he said, "Listen, I have a meeting in Trim. So what time will you be home?" I said, "It could be 11, half 11. So give me a ring when you come back." And I went up to a neighbour named Farrell and Betty, and we talked about it. They said, "It's a great honour," and so on. I know. I said, "But listen, it's different being an honour now, but can you do it?" You know, I surely to God to get somebody else from within the county. And got the call from Brian. It was 12:30 at night up to his place. Left him at 2:15. And he did the devil's advocate because he knew the sort of life that I led. And that it wasn't very structured with regard to hours, because it didn't matter whether the day or night it was, and the work that we did. And and I left Brian at 2:15 in the morning. I said, "Listen, I'll tell you what, I'll do it for 3 months until you get somebody." "Right," he said. And that's exactly what happened. And you know, down Notting Cliff, Meath were playing an O'Reilly Cup match against Longford, and Colin Rourke captained it. And that was the first match. And then the National League was coming off. And the National Leagues were restructured, 82, 83. And Meath had been in Division 3. And I always remember Mick Lyons and Jerry Mack and Colin Rourke talking about they were playing down in Cusick Park in Ennis. And there were more seagulls than people at the match, right? Okay. And anyhow, that was the start. You know, I came back and got involved there and was introduced to my selectors because they were, you know, the people were elected. And then I wanted to meet the players. And so I met them under the stand in Navan. And when they came in, one of the good few of the older ones weren't there at the time. They were late. When they came in, one of them, you could hear his voice. "Who are these so-and-sos here?" Because the panel was changed, right? And I didn't pretend to hear anything. But when I finished up, I said, "Look, can I say something to you now?" I said, "I don't care if you kick the living daylights out of each other on a Sunday. When you come into me on a Tuesday night, I don't care whether you're from Oldcastle or Dunboyne, Ballinbracky, or over in Bettystown, Four Corners." I said, "When you come in on Tuesday night, you're coming in as me, man. And we leave that behind and we get on with it." And the players were great, and they bought into it. And the selections were great. And the one thing we wanted to try and do was to try and get a steady team. And there were great players in the county. The club scene was very strong in Meath, and it was difficult. Lads were called up, they wanted to play with the clubs, right? And so I suppose it was the defeats in 76 and 77 by Dublin. It knocked a lot of the heart out of the lads because they'd won the league in 75 and against Dublin. That was a really great Dublin team. And couldn't seem to get over the first round, like between Longford a couple of times and Wexford and everything else. Couldn't seem to get over the first round and of the Leinster. But lo and behold, did we survive Division 1, Division 2, we got promotion. And I always remember Colin Rourke being interviewed, and they were asking about me. I said, "It's like this," he said, "if he's around long enough, we'll make a manager out of him." That's exactly what he said, right? And very like Colin. But that, so it was great getting there. So it meant we were going to be playing in Croke Park. So as a result of that, and it had been an awful wet winter, and Meath land is so heavy, I said, if we go into Croke Park, even then with Croke Park, I said, we won't be able to move our legs. And we went over to, I talked to Des Smith in the golf club in Bettystown, and we went over there and we trained on the sand dunes. And when we're finished the sand dunes, yeah, it was the month of February. I said, come on down here, lads. Went down to the beach. I took off my clothes and I went straight into the water. And I could hear the lads saying, he's mad. He's absolutely mad in the month of February. And the real reason that I went in was because I wasn't able to swim and I knew that they'd throw me in anyhow. So if I got in first, that'd take the pressure off me. And the reason we wanted to do some work on the beach and on the beach there in Bettystown. It's a huge open beach, and you know, you'd fit 40,000 people on the beach in Bettystown. It's an amazing beach. But Croke Park at the time, with the different stands, the old Cusick, the old Maddy, right? The way the whole stand was, the way the canal end was, there were these pockets of wind. So if you didn't know it, you'd think you'd be kicking at the goals, and suddenly, you know, it'd be like lads pulling the goalpost years ago, you know, so the ball would go wide. And so we want to get used to that. And it meant that we had to do work that we couldn't do on the pitches at home. And we qualified for that final anyhow. And we played Armanda, the National League final, 1983. And Mr. McConville scored a cracking of a goal against us, right? And Joe scored a couple of goals, Joe Kiernan. Little father Sean Haggerty was in charge. And we had a great game. And they won it. And after that match, I got a letter from Christo Hand. Christo Hand Obi-Gudgeon was left half back on the Meath team that won 49 All-Ireland. And he wrote to me, took the trouble, and he said what it meant to him to see a Meath team back competitive in Croke Park. And there was sleet, there was snow, there was misery. We thought we had a woeful crowd. There was 8,600 at it. And that was the start. And then you had to prepare for the first round in the Leinster. And we were drawn against Dublin. And first match, it was a draw in Croke Park. So the replay should have been held in Navan. And I spoke to Finn to get it, he had to leave Creven. I said, look, I want the lads to get used to playing in Croke Park. Will you let me play the replay there? Because I'm telling you, these lads are going to be in here a lot. And they said yes, because a Dublin crowd coming to Navan would have meant a lot to the town. So it was a draw the second day, the replay. It was a draw the first day, draw the replay. And in an extra time, Dublin won it. And they went on to win the All-Ireland in 1983. And Meath happened to play in the National League, in the first round of the league. We're now Division 1. We were playing Dublin in the first round of the National League in Navan. 25,000 people were there. And the town made a bomb, right? But it also, lads, because it was a draw again, suddenly we're not too far away. And that's something that your players have to believe in. And it's sitting in the Imperial in Dundalk with Liam Hayes and Colm Coyle. They were Mick O'Brien's team were playing down in a National League match in a pitch in Navan, the Geraldines pitch in Navan, or in Dundalk. And we were beaten. But again, why I'm saying that is sitting with the two lads and said, well, what do you think? It was Liam's first time to play senior football for me. Joe Castles got an injury and Liam Hayes came in. I said, lads, I think there's tremendous potential in this team. Now, Mick O'Brien's in charge. But I said, lads, you haven't a clue what fitness is. I said, you can't sustain it. I said, you have to learn that. Like it's, you can't store it. And that's the fact. So had I ever potential to be a Meath manager? Never in my life. So to find myself there, and of course, Kyle and Liam Hayes was such an integral part of everything that happened afterwards, you know. It is incredible, yeah. So that first year was an extraordinary year. Because even though then there was a knockout championship, so Ken the next year, 1984, I had no idea because I only ever took it for a year. So people asked me after the match, are you going again next year? And I wouldn't say, because I always felt, I'll wait till I'm asked, and then I'll make up my mind. But there's no point in saying I'm going to do it without being asked, right? And so I was there for another year. And that year in the National League, we got to the semi-final with a draw match, and then goal betters in the replay. Then you had the famous Centenary Cup, first open draw in the history of the game. And Monaghan and ourselves played in that final. And it was an amazing day for both our counties. And the way both counties went on from there. And we were fortunate we won it. I remember there was a reception in the RDS afterwards. And it was a big thing. It was a huge thing. And so then we were getting ready for the championship. And that was great. And we met Dublin again in the Leinster final. And they bet us 4 points. And I always remember, John Caffrey, Ben Tansey, God be good to him. Whatever they got tangled up, John got sent off, right? And he was in the pack of that Dublin team, but they still bet us 4 points. And so because you had won the Centenary, because the National League, you went to a replay, and because you got to the Leinster final, look, there was still a lot of goodwill going towards us. But I would say that it changed a lot of things for me. It changed because I felt it was very difficult with 7 selectors. Because naturally, you're on the sideline. They're all entitled to their opinion. So it's a bit like a board meeting. And even though probably the 6 men that were there, they all probably knew more than I did, but I just happened to be the man that was there. And spoke to every one of them, and they were very good about it. And I said, I'm not going to make fish of one or flesh of the other. And I looked for my own selectors. And that was a huge thing in the county. And there were 3 county board meetings about it. And eventually, Joe Castles and Colin O'Rourke went to the meetings, and Colin Cromwell, God bless him, and Jack Fitzgerald, they said, sure, look, we'll give him a chance. So I got my own selectors. It was Pat Reynolds and Tony Brennan, both All-Ireland medal winners. And Pat was the first Meath man to get an All-Star. But the men had great knowledge. In our first National League match, Galway bet us 11 points. We barely survived Division 1. And it came to, in 1985, we played Laois in the semi-final of the Leinster. And they kicked the lard out of us down in Tullamore. Bet us 10 points. And suddenly, holy God, what do you expect, lads? The man's a hurler. He's not a footballer, right? And right. And even though I played a lot of football, and just did we get caught in the hall? No, that John Cox, that was a great team. You had, when you take Mick Dempsey and Martin, and Tom Pendergast, they were a great team. That team, in '86 won the National League from Division 3. And that's the team that we met. And they bet us 10 points. They got caught afterwards and down to play down in Arklow, and Wicklow bet them. And that was the cruel thing about about the championship system. Cruel in one way and not in another. You know what I mean? It was, you had your chance. If you're able to take it, great. If you can't, you can't. Anyhow, why am I saying that is because having been beaten 10 points, having looked for my own selectors, naturally I was opposed when it came to that time, as was everybody's right. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure at all after it was over. No one said anything to me. And we talked together a little bit. And one night I came in home, and my mother got me good tour, was in the kitchen, and there was tea and brown bread. And Jerry McAdee, Colin O'Rourke, Liam Hayes, Vic and Porrig Lines, Joe Castles were sitting in the kitchen with my mother. And you wouldn't see the lads with my mother smoking, right? And she said, "Now, you crowd, now get up the house now and sort this thing out, whatever you're going to do." The sort now was, where exactly do we think we are? They've come a long way. It'd be a shame not to go further with it. But were they happy to have me? Was it the right man for it? I think. And Porrig Lines, Sean, will you do me a favour? And I said, what, Porgy? He said, will you put your shyness in your arse pocket? I said, Porgy, are you serious about that? He said, I am. And from then on, to me, this is the thing that changed everything in me. The chairs went round the circle. We picked our teams. We talked about the games we were going to play. The input from the players was huge. So it meant that it took me after the defeat again that day against Laois to cop on that there's no point you getting up and telling them how to suck eggs, you know what I mean? How to play the game. Are they happy with the way they're going to play it? And so on. And that's when we started getting a structure on it. And it also meant that things that were on their mind, they could say it. Maybe I didn't want to hear it, but they could say it. But likewise, without offence being taken, no blame. Let's get on with what can we do? And that's what changed everything. In the following year, the lads won the Leinster. And it started glorious periods of 16 or 17 years or whatever it was. But it was, and I always believe that it was the players that brought it round. Do you understand? If, no matter who was there, if you hadn't the will of the players, you were only wasting your time. And it was just a wonderful journey. And so proud and so honoured to have been there. And you know, if someone was to tell me that, you know, they were playing the Leinster final 84, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2001, that you played in those. That was the amount of Leinsters that you played in. And all the different things that happened in between were quite extraordinary. And you know, we won more than we were beaten in. And there were the league final, leagues that they won as well in between. And it just became the most wonderful journey. And it was extraordinary for, you see, if when you go picking teams, you start looking at birth certificates, forget about it. Either somebody, if the people say, oh, sorry, he's only a gossip. If he's able, yes. If he's not, don't play him. And if he's, Joe Castle lifted the Sam Maguire the day before his 34th birthday in 1988. Hadn't played all year with a hamstring problem. And if the All-Ireland hadn't been delayed a week because of the Tour de France being in Ireland and all the cameras that they had were all over the country, right? That extra week allowed Joe to lift the Sam Maguire the day before his 34th birthday. And that's the way chance goes, you know, and that's the way it is, you know. So so it was an extraordinary time. 1986, we were beating the All-Ireland semi-final by Kerry. And great game. And doing really well. And a ball went into our square. Big lines, Joe Castles, Mickey McQuillan, our fullback, our right fullback, and our goalkeeper ran for the ball. And they crashed into each other. And the ball went on the ground. And Ger Power just tipped the ball across the line. And after that, we scored 4 points. So we held that together well. And Tommy Doyle, who was the captain of Kerry in 86, Tommy and Colin Roar got tangled up. And Colin's left leg, he can't lift it very much behind him, right? And he fell, and Tommy fell, right? Tommy got a cut in the eye. And that really upset everybody. We lost our concentration. And he was the captain and he was taken off. And when the game restarted, Kerry scored 5 points just like that. They never looked back from there. And that day I learned if we have to win the Leinster next year, we're going to have to be 7 points better than we were this year. And if we're to win an All-Ireland, we're going to have to be about 10 points better. But that's not just me, but it's me saying to the collective what I believe. And there were changes, yes. And we got to the All-Ireland final after the semi-final against Derry in 87. And I lifted the phone to Kevin Heffernan because it was 20 years since Meath in an All-Ireland final. The first 80-minute All-Ireland final was Meath and Kerry in 1970. And my former veterinary teacher, Seamus Murphy, was right full back for Kerry. He brought me for minor trials. It's a mad story, yeah. And it was 16 years since Meath had won a Leinster previous year. So, I beg your pardon. So I rang Kevin. I said, Kevin, would you mind having a chat with you? I want to talk about All-Ireland Day and All-Ireland Week for the preparation. I said, I don't want to talk about Cork at all. And I said, I wouldn't do that with Billy Morgan, and I wouldn't do that in you. Listen to the store, so Kevin said. You come out to Mary and myself, and we'd have the tea. And I went out to Kevin, and see, we never had to deal with tickets or anything like that. You know what I mean? And suddenly, he said, now, these are the things you get out of the way. Get the lads to understand. Probably be allowed to buy 4 tickets to maybe give them 6 for free. And that's it. And tell the lads not to get involved in getting tickets for people, because suddenly they'll have aunts and uncles and friends that they've never heard of for years, and you could have 1,000 of them on to you. He said, don't get involved. The second thing is, whatever, you know, where you're going to go, where you're going to stay, that all has to be put into place very quickly, so that your job is to look after the team, the preparation of the team. The county board is the rest, but they have to know what you feel as well. And that night when I left Kevin, I came home here, and my mother was alive at the time, and Fintan and Liam came to my house at 12:30 at night, and we bought dinner, and we went through from the tickets to what would happen, you know, that'd be gear or whatever it was. And people wouldn't realise at that stage the media attention, what it was like. Compared to today, it would be nothing like that at all. In '86, we won the Leinster, and you go for the All-Ireland semi-final. You know, you had the Meath Chronicle, you had the Drogheda Independent, you had Peadar O'Brien from the Press, Paddy Downey from the Times, Don from the Irish Independent, Donald Carroll. Now, he said, so we had a press night. We'd have to have a press night. So it's a year later, and suddenly local radio was coming into it. And we organised the press night. And the advice to the players was very simple. Yes, we go to it. And we would talk to them that night, answer whatever they want. But that's the only interviews that we'd be doing. And that's the way it was. And that was back in 1987. And, you know, if I compare that with 2001, when there was 134 media at the press night. In 87, yes, you had RTE and TG Carr starting off, right? And it was radio, and so it was a new experience for us, but it was important to address it because that's what it was going to be. We were really fortunate in that at that stage we were still training in Dalgan Park, and the grounds were amazing, and you could park there, and you had the field, but people would come in, and there were hundreds and hundreds. I got 7,500 postcards before the All-Ireland wishing the team well, and like extraordinary. And it was, the place was on fire, but we had to be mannerly. And what Kevin said to me, I took it all in and make sure that lads were protected. My job then was, as best as I could, was to, you know, protect them from the anxiety of their own parents, their brothers and sisters, their girlfriends, or whatever it was. Just protect them from it. Don't allow them. But that realization that half the training you're going to do is to help you to absorb the tension on the day. And they're the things. So by the Tuesday night, we had in our head what was going to happen and what we needed to do. And the lads bought into it. Now, you take Colin O'Rourke, we're 12 in his family. and he was married, Trish, okay, and Elaine was the babe, and his in-laws and outlaws. And I told them many tickets they were going to get. And Colin just said, lads, I want to say something now, he said. I know in my family, they're all big enough and bold enough to look after themselves. You have enough to do your own job. And it's amazing when, and Mick Lyons was so uncomplicated. Like, I remember going out with Mick out to the Grand in Malahide to talk about what would happen there on the morning of the match, then where it was bringing them that morning on the beach, and then into Croke Park. And suddenly there was a new thing with guard escort, right? And that's enjoying it, but not getting caught up in all that was going to go on. So there was a whole lot of things that had to be put in place, and yet knowing the excitement that was out there, because no matter where you went, you know, sheep were painted green and gold. Charlie Bulls were new, just they were green and gold as well. It was just an extraordinary. The night, I remember Noel Keating got me good to Keypack. Noel would be a neighbour, but there was a shop in Cluny called the Bus Shop, and Noel met me in the shop, and he said, "Listen, if there's anything you want, give me a shout." Now there was no sponsorship at this stage, and I came out into the car. Then I got out of the car. I said, "Listen, can I talk to you about something?" He said, "What?" I said, "Win or lose, the day after the All-Ireland, there's a reception in Croke Park." And I said, "I can only imagine what it's like if you win, and I can imagine what it's like if you're beaten. But I said, it's nice to meet the players that you've tried your best against." And I said, when we leave Dublin and we get as far as Cluny, they will have enough. The night the All-Ireland said, I'm telling you, none of them would have gone to bed, because they had been, it was like living in a monastery, for months, right? And I said, like, they would not have been part of any of the excitement or the build up, the clubs or anything like that. So anyhow, I said, "No, would you mind if we stopped at Keypack, made a pit stop, because to go to the toilet?" And we got as far as Cluny, and there's the Artane Boys Band outside Keypack. There's 10,000 people there, and there was a bull painted green and gold walking in front of us, and I still see Jerry, Quinn, and Marty, and Jack and Marty, and like so many ex-Meath players there. Absolutely, the tears in their eyes. It was like the loaves and fishes, because Keypack, everybody got fed outside, but we stopped. We just came for a pit stop. And I also had said to Noel, I said, when we leave Cluny, or come to Cluny, even though Navan is only 21 miles, because we have to go through Summerhill, Mick was the captain, I said it's going to take us 5 hours. And that's what it did, all right? But again, it was an extraordinary time. But you asked me about the preparation for the day and everything else. It's important to say those things, because no matter what you do, you need that bit of goodwill and you need that bit of luck with you. The way we applied ourselves was very good. Tony Brennan and Pat Reynolds, they were an enormous help. Frankie Byrne from the 49 team. Frankie was around with us as well. But like, I think it was that everybody understood what we needed to do. And that fitness that I talked about back, when Nick was in charge of the Meath team, all the training that you would have done, that'd be from the tires to the dunes and so on. All of that was to be at your best on the day, because we wouldn't have done one sprint for 10 weeks before that All-Ireland final. Everything was on with the ball. So with that, you had learned to survive. I remember talking then about, the day of the All-Ireland itself, the time you're in the dressing room, the time you have to leave it. And it's 20 minutes before the start of the match. So there's no point in breaking bottles in the dressing room and roaring and shouting, because it's all going to be diluted when you get out there. So whatever message we had, that had to be clear in our heads from the Tuesday night beforehand, right? And that particular time, depending on which team went out first, you had either 7 minutes to kick around, fair, or you had 9 minutes. And, you know, there was the kickabout, there was the toss, there was the meeting of the president, there was the march around. And, you know, if you weren't prepared for it, you could easily get distracted. So the whole occasion could have destroyed you. And Cork were lucky in that they had Billy Morgan, and Billy's such vast experience and so on. And so we were both well prepared for it. We weren't distracted. And when the game started, there's no more than all teams. Things can go right at the start, things can go against you. But even when 5 points behind, never once felt that they wouldn't do it. It was a strange feeling. And that's not a cocky thing, but that's exactly it. And it's funny how things come about. But the preparation beforehand, knowing what to do. I said, why do you go to Peter McDermott or Brian Smith? Like, it was 54 since Peter's last All-Ireland as a player. Never mind 67 when he was a manager. All right, it was Mick Campbell who was the manager in 1970. And so it was more important, like probably a simple thing at the time. The stewards on the day of the All-Ireland final were different from the other matches. People in charge of the dressing room were different from the other matches. And everything was to do with sure that everything was right. When you come out on the field itself, I just found the energy in it was huge, absolutely huge. I was trying to keep a lid on it and not go mad. I remember 1996, Tommy Dowd was captain. And there was something must have sitting right with me before, and I couldn't figure it out. It was a very young team. And there was a ferocious match, an amazing game with ourselves in Tyrone in the semi-final. And lots of controversy, lots of media, which you wouldn't have had in 87 and 88. But I said, there's something I'm missing. And I thought of it. And I said to Tommy Dowd, I said, Tommy, just remember what I said. Mary Robinson is president of Ireland. It's her first All-Ireland with Mayo playing. She's from Mayo. I said, so this is going to be an incredible meeting the president of Ireland. Other British president comes to meet the Mayo team, never mind our team. And I said, Tommy, you make sure when you meet the president, I said, she knows you're from Dundee. So it came the day of the All-Ireland, and the president came, and she lovely, lovely and graceful. She'd bow her head, and she shook hands with Tommy. And then with Conor Martin, Mark O'Reilly, Darren Fay, Mark McConnell, and she came to Colm Coyle. Colm held her hand, and he didn't let it go straight away. And she looked at him, and they looked at each other, and everything went silent. And Colm said, how are things at home? And that broke the tension. So when it did come to she meeting, that was on his own volition, but do me. So when it came to she meeting Mayo, greeting the Mayo team, and the place, the other 31 counties wanted to see us beaten anyhow, you know. It meant that we weren't shell shocked. And they're the little things that sometimes you have to think about. You know, in 2001, that big win against Kerry, that replay, I thought I had it right, but I hadn't got it right for the lads. You know, and that's the way football is. And you know, people were being, you know, there could have been, you know, Kerry have been a great team, you know what I mean? And you always have to be respectful. And just everybody knows so much about you within our own county. There's no way the Galway can beat you. But of course, that's the great lesson in life. And we learned a lot from that too. That was the seventh final. The second, we had two replays in between, both in '88 and in '96. So each time it was different. Each Uachtaráin was different. Joe Castle being injured in '88 when he came to the Leinster final. Mick Lyons wanted Joe to lift the cup because he was from O'Mahony's, he was the captain. And Joe wouldn't go up because he didn't play, right? And so what happened when Mick was calling Joe, he wouldn't come up. So what did he? Mick just turned around. He didn't wait for Jack Booper, who was chairman of the Leinster Council, to give him the cup. He lifts the cup. Look, he said, Meath and Dublin know what it takes to win a Leinster final, right? And okay, but again, they're the things that happen in the moment. And you know what? It's nice, and it's nice, and it's nice they can be still like that. But it is such an incredible occasion. I remember in '88 we were training, as we were in '99, on the Hill of Tara, and there was a German group who were doing they were doing a program on sport throughout the world, and they filmed us on the Hill of Tara. And when it came to the end of year in Germany of their sporting year, it opened with the Meath team training at Tara. Yeah, and the All-Ireland final. And this is an amateur association. And sure, like, you know, the publicity that brings, right? And then you come along, you know, in '99, and because it was the new millennium, and the Japanese people were there, and again, they wanted to show what Tara meant to the Paschal Flame and Slane and so on. It was extraordinary. And there were things that weren't supposed to happen. We were good at accommodating it, you know what I mean? It didn't do us any harm. And it was all such a learning graft. And, you know, I know probably today you have to be much more structured, but I'm not saying you can put a structure on me. I'm an intuitive man, and I'm never afraid. You know, I could never be Sherry McEntee. I could never be a Bernie Flynn, a Graham Gertie, a Bobby O'Malley. I could never be those people. But I never lost sight of the fact that I thought I could help them to get or achieve excellence in their sport. And that was a huge privilege, I have to say that. And I never thought, having played for Meath for 20 years in hurling, that I'd ever find anything that would come near what it's like to play. But that is it. See, it's amazing you see, like, when you won the Leinster in '86, everybody was delighted for you. In '87, you win All-Ireland. And 17% of the population of Ireland were unemployed. 23% of the population of Meath. We were the richest people in the world. We all had a common denominator. So whether you had a job or you didn't have one, and likewise for young men trying to get jobs, it was really difficult unless you lived in Dublin. So suddenly, doors opened for the lads. And it's extraordinary how, even though you played for the love of it and for the fun and everything else, it opened doors for lads to start their own business or get involved or change or whatever. And that was fantastic to see. There was also that realization that when you win an All-Ireland that day, your life really will never be the same again. It's because no matter where you go, people know you. And the things that people remember about matches or whatever. And it is quite extraordinary. And you know, in '88, played Dublin in the National League with a draw. We went to America with an all-star trip, and we came back, and we played them in the replay. It was probably the best that team ever played. And the Leinster final, it was so tough again, you know, ourselves in Dublin. And I suppose those matches really prepared you for whatever was coming, right? And but I always remember in 1991, because we had the 4 matches against Dublin in the first round to prepare to qualify, to play either team to qualify to play Wicklow. And when we got the All-Ireland semi-final against Roscommon, and they were leading 5 points with 5 minutes to go, Brian Stafford scored 6 points. And just, there wasn't a nerve in the man's body. The relief was extraordinary. And if you were to say to me again, apart from Colin Rowe getting the pneumonia and losing 15 pounds weight the week of that, Bobby O'Malley breaking his leg, you know, and not being able to play, you'd honestly feel that if the match was played in a fortnight rather than 3 weeks, that allowed you to come down. Do you follow me? And that extra week just brought us down that bit. And we were caught flat-footed against a great down team. And the year before, we'd been beaten by Cork in the All-Ireland final. We'd won the league that year, the first four-quarter league. And again, the team that Billy Morgan and selectors picked, it did a super job. And it really nullified us. And like, it's funny if something, if your name is on a trophy. Shea Farry scored 4 points in the middle of the field for Cork. At one stage, Jerry McAlee went full length and he blocked the ball. Shea was kicking. That ball he blocked went straight to the black spot. So it's nearly like sometimes your name is on it. Do you follow me? And when we played down there in 1991, again, you know, it was such, like, with the 4 matches against Dublin, we had 2 matches against Wicklow. You know, people they would nearly forget about that. And in Ireland at the time, every championship match had to be played on the Sunday, couldn't be played on the Saturday. You know, first championship match was played on the Saturday with some of those replays. Came along to a Leinster final against Laois. The replay was played on the Saturday. So many rules were nearly broken. And you'd come after Italian 90 with the soccer. And everybody said the GAA was finished. And suddenly this turns its head up, you know what I mean? And they're the extraordinary things when you look back on it. And the things you learn from the defeat, it never goes away. But like, the teams that bet you were great teams. You know, it's funny, I met Brendan Hughes up in the Abbey in Newry just about 10 weeks ago. The first thing he said, why did you bring Rourke on earlier in 91? It was a simple answer, but I never told anybody before, because the doctor said, you know, we get 20 minutes or no longer, danger of cardiac arrest. Now, some of the things that will be said about the mistake you made, that's fine. Everybody is entitled, but they didn't know everything that I knew. Do you understand? So did I feel hurt by it? Never. Honest to God, that never worried me, because all I can do is what I think is right. And I can't do any more than that. Does it mean that I know everything? No, but jeepers, not at all. Quite the opposite. And would I have learned from it if I had the same chance again? Of course I would. But I also knew that there was a Monday morning coming and you could start life all over again. I remember in '88 coming home, and the excitement was enormous, having won that second after the replay with Cork. And we left Keepack and going by our house on the way to Summerhill. The car stopped at the road, and my mother hadn't been well at the time. And my sister Josephine, who died only a year ago, Jo was in the car with Mammy. And honest to God, I was that tired. I didn't want to go any further. I just wanted to stay at home. But like, you get back on the bus and you get on and do it. But like, I wouldn't have contacted any of the lads for days. I had nothing left. And I mean nothing left. And I wasn't playing. So you can't imagine what way they were, you know? And that realisation, I'll never forget that first day in Croke Park against Kerry. That realisation, if we ever get to an All-Ireland final, my work only starts that day. And the same with every championship match. No matter how much preparation you've done, like, complain about being tired or whatever, I have to have myself right as well. And I remember Desi Ferguson, Snitchy, he rang me before the Leinster final in 1984. Me, junior hurlers were playing down in Kilkenny. Would I play? All right, and I'm 42 at the time. And I would just love to have played. And I knew then I was finished in this respect, that I knew that it's the first thing that came to me, now, if anything happens to me, I won't be able to do my job. That meant that was the closure of that. This is where I am now, and make the most of it, make the best of it. It was such an honour to be still asked. And I say to Des, look, Des, there's oceans of young fellas out there, but he knew I was playing well enough in my club, and he gave me the option if I wanted it, and that was lovely as well. And the things you learn. I always remember in 2001 when Morris Fitzgerald came on against us, and Conor McMurphy, first thing Conor McMurphy did, I loved it. He went over to Morris to shake his hand, and he just come on the field to try and beat it. You know what I mean? Because that's what he deserved, And they're great things in the GAA, and I love that. And would it be terrible if your player wasn't allowed to do that? You know what I mean? That's where you have to get people to trust themselves. You won't go too far wrong. You'll make mistakes, but not too many, I learned very quickly, like from the first day that I was with the team at the O'Reilly Cup. And then later on in the year, winning the O'Byrne Cup, Mickey Downs was captain because Clareman was a teacher in Navan. He's involved in Ironside for years, right? And then, the thing I learned more than anything else was how much you have to be prepared, how much you have to be, and I always like people, and no matter what would have happened with anybody, you just had to, you couldn't allow distraction. So the memorable things, my God, 84 was extraordinary. Meath winning a cup, the Centenary Cup. 86 was hugely emotional because the Thursday before, we're having a bite to eat after training. And Frankie Byrne asked me, but would you mind if I say a few words? And I'm one of these people. I don't like an outside person coming in the week of a match to any team. And and it's like all the different people that you're working with you. Like on the day of the match, you assume, like you take it, assume is the wrong word. You know that the people that are with you have the lads ready. Do you understand? Okay? So you don't need all them people around you on that particular day. You're thankful and you're grateful. And it's not that you're forgetting about them, but it's a question of it's now it's the players now. I had the buddy to it, and he said, could he say a few words? And I said, Frank, okay. And he stood up and he talked about the Meath team in 1949, which was his team. And he said, it'll go down in history. It'll go down in folklore. Be the first Meath team that won the Sam Maguire. And he said, it will always be there because whoever's the first is always the first. And but he said, lads, we were fortunate. He said, we played 48 games in 52 Sundays between National League matches and open the pitches and everything else, right? And he said, we probably should have won more, beating the 2 All-Irelands, in the National League in New York. And he said, I don't think our team would keep the ball kicked out to ye. What a thing. What a man. And like on that night after winning in 86, to hear the lads who've been around for a good while saying, wasn't that an extraordinary thing that Frankie said? In other words, he believed in them, right? And it wasn't just lip service. And it was such an important statement. And and that's why when I say to you at the start, I don't like others coming in. You're never too set. If there's anything that can help you, take help anywhere you can get it. And we'd be like the extraordinary thing. Frankie built up a relationship with all those lads, age 6, 7, 8, 1991, so on, until the day he died. They loved Frankie, and they loved when the older players would go to the training sessions. from 54, 49, 54, 67. And I'd always gone out for a cup of tea with lads, the players who hadn't played. And it was brilliant to have them there. And but those few minutes, you're having a bite of tea, and it breaks, it breaks the intensity of it. You know what I mean? And it's also shown the men that have gone before you how important they are for making what it was or create the opportunity for us. And I always thought that was great. And it was lovely. And I'll never forget one day, Paddy Dixon, centre half, 54, in 1949. Grandson of his was killed tragically in an accident with his truck. And the family was distraught. And he put some of his grandchildren into the car. And he ended up in Gaelic Park where we were training. And I saw him. And I brought him in to the lads and the children. And the man never recovered himself, but it was a way of passing on the memories and the share. This is the Meath team. It's more than just football. It's a way of life. It's a culture. I just thought he coming was extraordinary. The honour to us was amazing, but it was a simple thing, to share a cup of tea with him, in his grief. And I think they're the things that, the influences of them. They're amazing what they do, incredible. God bless them all. Always give yourself the best chance. Like when I say give yourself the best chance, take nobody for granted. The importance of the skills, of continuously practicing the skills, because something outrageous you might do in the back garden someday will get you out of the spot or get you into a better spot on the day of a match. And the training can be very structured nowadays, but we all know that with Meath football, as well as a lot of other counties, there's a certain madness in you. And when I say madness, I mean the energy we get from having a cut at it, that no matter how much you were down, you always feel that you can win it. And you always feel that you can get there. And and it's so difficult for young people and so wonderful for them nowadays, because they very seldom, when they get the profession or their trade or whatever, they seldom stick at it for longer than 10 years. The world's their oyster. But no matter where they go, there's a Gaelic team there, the hurling team there, all over the world. It's like universal. I suppose the highlight would be getting married on the 22nd December 1990. It was the night after the All-Star match. And the way it was done was because the All-Stars were on, right? When I think about it, and nobody but Tina would be of the same. Like, she knew nothing about the games, but loved the camaraderie. She loved the caring for each other. That, I suppose, it was, messages came to me at the back of a cigarette box, right? And to her, I'm wishing as well. And it was like, I was 47 getting married, and she said she didn't see a queue. And it wasn't that I ever had a thing against it or anything like that. But in many ways, I would never have thought I was an important man or had an important role to play. And it took me being involved with the lads and involved in the management to understand the importance of trusting yourself. She helped me do that. And the games helped to set that up for me, because I think otherwise I'd have just kept chasing my tail. And I'd like to thank her. I'd like to thank the GP for having done that for me.